I want to introduce you to the genre that some of you know of Midrash. Midrash takes a story and it expands it. It says, what were the characters thinking? What are other issues to explore? It takes that white space and it fills it in with stories and interpretations that actually bring new interpretations and new understandings. So I want to start with a midrash that I think is one of the most important midrashim from our time, for our time. It's a midrash that happens right after God creates the Garden of Eden and Adam. And it imagines God leading Adam around this garden. And I want to pull you into this process of midrash. What do you think God would have said to Adam at that moment? Because that's what the midrash tries to answer. And here's what the midrash pictures God saying. It pictures God saying, Adam, look at my works. See how beautiful they are. I've created all of this for you. See to it that you do not spoil or destroy it. For if you do, there'll be no one to repair it after you. No one. That midrash is a simple little story, has so much in it. It drives home that we are there with Adam, looking at the beauty of nature, saying, this is extraordinary. And when we encounter God's creation, which we do every day, it needs to be with a heart and soul of awe, wonder, and mystery. And it's for you, it is for us. But then that next line, God removes God's self. This simple story is theologically revolutionary. Because from the moment of creation, God says, I'm not going to come in anymore to fix or to make things better. It's on you. And if you destroy it, there'll be no divine help and there'll be no one else to fix it. The reason that the Midrash tears my heart open is that it reminds me that it is in our hands. Hakol talui banu. And as I think about what that might mean right now, I can only look at this midrash and say, have we destroyed the precious world that God has left in our hands? Midrash is ongoing. We take the same story, the same image, and we bring our voices as we recreate the story to reflect our moment. So I'm going to ask you not only to do it in your heads, but to let me know what midrash you might write. By the way, midrash is this genre that is exploding with creativity now. What would you write if you imagined God walking with us, with you, around nature? What would God say to you? What midrash will you write? Picture God. Imagine what God might say. One midrash that I came up with built upon this concept of God being unable to intervene because God has given us freedom. What does the Talmud say God is doing in heaven, watching the terrible things that humans do to one another? God is weeping. So my first midrash simply pictures God weeping. There are no words that God says to us. God's tears say it all. Maybe that midrash needs to be the midrash for this moment, because we look out at the devastation that we have wrought, and all that God can do is cry. I know many of you have felt those tears yourself. But we let Midrash continue to grow. The beauty of Midrash is that there are dozens of Midrashim about the same moment, all going in different directions because the authors have different religious souls. And that's the beauty of Judaism, is all of those voices on the page together, ancient voices and modern. So I want to picture another Midrash, this one which pulls from the prophetic indignation that the prophets felt that God wanted to express as God witnessed our injustice and misbehavior. I am picturing God walking with us and admonishing, what have you done? You've destroyed. You've taken the precious environment with which I have entrusted you, and that destruction will ripple in ways that you are seeing and in ways you cannot imagine. Wake up, God screams. Think of lives lost. Think of health impacted. Think of majestic forests and seas destroyed. Think of refugees who are created. All of those things were happening, and you closed your eyes. You chose comfort and profit over responsibility. And I know many of you might write that type of midrash because you feel that anger when it comes to what we have done to our precious environment. But midrash takes us in so many ways. It asks us to explore different responses. And maybe the midrash to write at this moment is a midrash that may have tears and anger, but it may say, you know what? Don't let that paralyze you. Maybe in this midrash, God is the educator. God is the quiet, wise voice which reminds us that yes, damage has been irrevocably done, but it's not too late to change. Can you imagine God saying in a way that motivates, use your wisdom, your creativity, and your passion, because you, humans, can grow and change. And so many of you have done it, especially regarding these issues. God would encourage us. I've seen environmental awareness translate into action in extraordinary ways. Keep at it. Work harder. Let the beauty of nature inspire you to fix, innovate, create new solutions. Let this be a watershed moment. I am picturing all three of those midrashim, and I want to know what midrash you would write. As God is walking around the world with you, what's God saying to you and our world? Because here's the power of midrash. Midrash 1 acknowledges emotions. It gives voice to my pain, to my anger, and to my hope. That's the extraordinary genre of literature that we need to embrace. The other thing that midrash does is as you do those things, it spurs you to action. I would imagine that almost every midrash that I will hear from you will involve the theme of tshuva, of turning, of returning, of seeing where we've missed the mark, of changing our behaviors, of pursuing different policies that protect this precious earth with a sense of urgency. So I want you to weave tshuva, the acts that we need to do, together with the Jewish imperative to care for the earth. And I want to explore that imperative. I want you to leave today with a sense of Judaism has what to say about how we treat the earth. And if I'm going to give you one sentence, it would be this: the earth is not ours. The earth is not ours. I wonder how many people who are not grounded in a culture like ours are able to say that sentence. The earth is not ours. We are guardians of an earth entrusted to us by God. Go back to that creation story. Indeed, God says the earth is here for you, but then there's a caveat. You are to li'ovda u'lishamra. What's la'avod? Work serve. What's lishamra? Guard and protect it. We are guardians of this earth. We are called to serve it and to guard it. And that ethic, that Jewish ethic, that ethic grounded in the Torah and developed over the generations, is an ethic of responsibility and humility. It's an ethic of caring and protecting. And I think it's fair to say that few moral principles have been more forgotten, more disastrously than this one. And I can think of none more important at this moment. That concept of the earth is God's, and we are God's guardians, is further deepened by something that's happening this year. This year is a Shemitah year. I think a lot of rabbis are talking about Shemitah this year. I actually want to hear you say the word because I want you to go home with it. Shemitah. 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 Every 7 years in the Bible, you let the land lie fallow. You don't plant. By the way, the implications of that law are far transcend this sermon, and we will talk about it. There's two other pieces to that law. One, you let it lie, you eat from whatever grows, and anyone who needs food can come onto the land. That's huge. And debts are forgiven. Those are the rules of Shemitah. Those are the rules of Shemitah. And look at the interesting tie between the land and plenty and those who do not have, and how the two interweave. I want you to think about the implications of an entire year of not planting. The word Shemitah literally means release. And it weaves into what I've been teaching. The land is released from our sense of ownership because it's not ours. Debts are released and forgiven because we need to lift up those who are impoverished and release them from that pain. Those who are in need are released from their poverty because we are responding to them. The word Shemitah means release. And what is it? It's a reboot. It's a chance to give the land the opportunity to rejuvenate from overuse. By the way, agronomists have proven that this is absolutely true. Maimonides said it 1,000 years before that. It's a chance to create economic equality. It's a chance when you step back, you appreciate in ways that you hadn't seen before. That's the power of Shemitah. Because when you're a farmer, you are so busy with the demands of harvest and planting and tending that you can't appreciate it. The year 5782 is a Shemitah year, and it is prescient because we need the message of Shemitah to safeguard our future. When you don't mess with nature, even to harvest, what you do is you appreciate it. You hold it in awe. You see things that you may have missed before. Every Shabbat, one of the reasons I love Shabbat is it says, stop creating. Stop changing the world and reflect on all that you have done. Because when you stop interfering with nature, you simply appreciate it. By the way, I appreciate that our president, Steve Dines, called us to observe Shabbat, because I believe that a day of cessation is what society and each of us need. And then you take it further. Huge cessation. A year of cessation. I want to think about what that means, but I want you to go to a place in nature. Go to a moment when you've sat with awe at the majesty of the world around you. I want to read to you from the philosopher Edmund Burke. It staggers us when we stumble upon something magnitudes greater than our finite minds. Aspects of the natural world, towering mountains, tempestuous seas, a dark forest, a blinding desert. we simply sit with awe. Mimi and I were in Lake Tahoe this summer before the fires, and there were those moments of awe. And I know that I want to use Shemitah, and I want to invite you to join me in deepening awe, deepening a daily sense of appreciation of nature's majesty. It's extraordinary when you stop and look. I had a moment where I was just looking at the ripples of the water, and it was a wow. The pebbles on the shore, the blue sky, the myriad of birds, insects. I want to feel the soil more. Watch the sun. Use Shemitah to join me in deepening that which too many of us have lost. Some of you have it amazingly, which is a daily wondering at creation. When the ancient farmers took that year off and didn't harvest, I would imagine that as they watched what the earth does, how it regenerates, the cycle of seeds growing even when they haven't been planted, that they saw rhythms that they didn't see before. Scientist Kate Marvel wrote, "I'm a scientist, so I believe in miracles. I live on one." A soul open to the mystery and majesty of creation reminds us to treat our planet like the miracle that it is. When we are guardians of the earth, it creates an ethical imperative demanding that we safeguard. Listen to what Václav Havel wrote. He writes, "I believe that we have little chance of averting an environmental catastrophe unless we recognize we are not the masters of being, we are only a part of being." Let me give you another story. It's a story to hold on to. Another story that's seemingly simple, but it really has a lot in it. It's the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, 2nd century. And Shimon Bar Yochai tells the story of a group of people who went out in a boat. Nice little boat ride. One of them pulls out a drill and starts to drill a little hole in the boat. And everybody around says, what are you doing? And the man says, "It's just under my seat." And they respond to him, "Don't you get it? When the water comes in under your seat, it will flood the ship for all of us." Boy, that's a simple story, but that's a profound story because the boat is the earth and everyone in the world is a passenger on the boat. We are connected. One person or one nation's action can jeopardize the safety and security of everyone. And here's what we're doing. It's why this story is so powerful. We are drilling holes in the boat. We are watching as others drill holes in the boat. There is no question about the impact of our actions on the environment. We are witnessing it every single day. Ours is the responsibility to shift our direction, to stop the ship from sinking, to change our behavior. Every generation is called to great work. The work of this generation is to stop exploitation and destruction of our precious earth, really for our own convenience and profit. The call of this generation is to use our wisdom, our passion, and our creativity to repair and change. The call of this generation is to do this not only for ourselves and our world, but for our children and our descendants. When I try to say, "God, what words do I need to say?" I need to look in my heart and say, what keeps me up at night? And what keeps me up at night is knowing that we are failing our children and our descendants. It's knowing that we've neglected, polluted, and abused the environment in unfathomable ways. It's knowing that those impacts ripple. We need to do tshuva. And one of the things I always ask you is to take that list, A to Z, al chet, and make it real. We could write an entire al chet for what we do to the environment. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the sin we've committed by despoiling this earth. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the wrong we have done by acting as if the earth is ours to exploit. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the wrong we have committed by our inaction. Awareness, verbalizing, that's what the al chet is, and it's meant not just to beat our chest, but to spur us to act. Shmita is the opportunity to reimagine and reset, to commit ourselves with every fiber of our being to safeguarding the gift God has given. I want to say that this is not a political issue, in my opinion. This is not a red or blue issue. This is an issue that should unite us, that should cross political divides. We can agree that we have to reduce emission from fossil fuels that spew into the environment. We can agree that we must cease polluting our water so that plastic dumps the size of the state of Texas are not what define what happens when we view the ocean. We can agree that our choices have the potential to shift this tide. We can agree that this moment calls for us to urgently unite and step up our efforts. There have been moments in history where tides have turned. I know that some people will hear this and say, what can I do? I'm one person. When we join together and say, this needs to be a moment like when we rescued Soviet Jews, a moment like when we fought for civil rights, a moment like when the state of Israel was established, a moment like when most of this country stopped smoking. There are moments which change tides. A moment when we decided, of course we can go to the moon. Herzl said, and it's so powerful, Im tirtzu ein zo agada, if you will it, it is not a dream. We need to say that we together are going to face this issue with passion. And your personal commitments, for all that they may seem so small, they ripple out and up. This certainly is about policy. And I'm calling for us to fight for changes. And I have to tell you, I say this with some hope because I'm inspired and emboldened by some of the policies that are beginning to be enacted. We here are reconstituting our Environmental Action Committee. And I know that together we as a synagogue will say, here's where we're going to unite. Here's where our shared voice is going to have activism. I am certain that there are policies upon which we will coalesce, focusing on clean energy, shifting infrastructure, investing in innovation. You know what? It's happening. Did you read about the companies that are dependent upon the shipping industry that have called upon the container ship industry to make ships that run on clean energy? It was just in the paper a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, wow, that's the voice from the bottom up that creates significant change. It's people saying, we have to change it, and I'm going to be part of the change, rather than saying, ugh, that might affect my profits. We have set ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and those goals can be achieved. We have begun to shift to cleaner forms of energy. By the way, this is not all simple answers. It's complicated. It'll take will and hard work. There are people in this community who will help inspire us. At Rosh Hashanah, I talked about Andy Karsner. Remember the guy who named his daughter Carolyn Hope? You might have read about Andy in the last couple of weeks in the paper. Andy found a way, he's a clean energy expert. He found a way to get elected to the 12-person Exxon board of directors. You know, and he's coming on to make a difference. He's coming on to say, let's, as a company, invest in our planet, invest in clean energy. It's big things. It's by the way, everything is a big thing. A couple years, David Arfin. David, did I see you here? There he is. David's going to co-chair our Environmental Action Committee. David came in, he shared a project that he's doing in India. In India, all of these small families had small diesel burning ovens. And those diesel burning ovens not only polluted the air, but it made the people sick. So what did David do with this company? They invested in solar stoves that were efficient, that worked. And those little things, the combination of all of those little pieces, all of those innovations, they give us hope. They give us tikva. They say that the gap between what should be and what is can be narrowed through our creativity, through our innovation, through our passion. And so I'm calling upon this community to rally around the Jewish environmental ethic and to create a surge of energy and activism that will contribute to the difference that is sweeping and needs to continue to sweep. Our collective voice and individual actions catalyze change. Make this your priority. Support policies, candidates, and legislations that take these actions seriously. Press elected officials to take action, agitate, and advocate. Join, explore our Environmental Action Committee. We'll build on previous efforts, and I think that what's going to come will be extraordinarily meaningful. We are connecting to an organization called Chazon. Chazon, by the way, go to their website. They've got a whole year of Shemitah stuff. Project Shemitah, it's good. There's so much Jewish energy around this. And they're giving us a big list of possible things to do. We'll pick a couple. Come in and be part of the voice that decides what direction we will go. And your individual actions matter. Because your individual actions are part of a culture shift. It's a shift in consciousness that emanates up and out. And I'm going to ask you to stretch yourself. Go to that area where you know you're not doing that which is as environmentally meaningful as it should be. Every year with my Zion class, we do a little audit of behaviors, and all of them say, oh my goodness, reach into areas of discomfort, reach into areas that you've resisted making the changes that you know, be passionate about saving water. Be passionate about turning off lights and faucets. Be passionate about what you purchase, cars, appliances. Certainly compost, certainly reduce plastic. That's a hard one. Plant, gardens, trees. Every action reminds us we are not powerless. And awareness and action connect us to advocacy. That's the power of Shemitah. Because we're aware of our responsibility to the earth, and therefore we act. There was a great second century Rabbi Choni, and Rabbi Choni saw an old man planting a tree, and he was puzzled, because Choni was one of those, it only matters in the moment guys. He said, old man, what are you planting a tree for? You will not be around to eat from his fruits. And the response of the old man was, just as my ancestors planted trees for me, I plant trees for my ancestors. Environmental activism is for our children and our children's children. We need to think about the world that we are leaving them so that we can say, just as my parents and ancestors planted trees and preserved the environment for us, we changed when things began to become so askew and began to plant trees again. Environmentalist David Brower once said, environmentalists may make meddlesome neighbors, but they make great ancestors. Let's be great ancestors. Hadavar talui banu. The matter depends on us. We owe it to ourselves, to the world, to our children, and all who come after them. May we embrace Shemitah in the coming year. Gmar Chatima Tova. Baruch Tia, thank you.